Thanks for checking out this movie review video. This is for the 2022 film The Communion Girl. It's a Shudder original, and it's coming to Shudder on Friday, August 11th. So this is a no spoiler review because I'm putting it out before the film hits Shudder, and it's a new film. Now, I said it's 2022, but that's when it was released in Spain. Yes, this is a Spanish film, so just be prepared. If you're a person who does not like subtitles, I'm sorry, this has subtitles. And also, I'm sorry on top of that, because I would recommend checking this movie out. I'll tell you right off the top. Interesting enough, there's a comparison I want to make to an existing film that not everyone, but a lot of people are very familiar with. I'm not going to do that until the very end, just in case people don't want comparisons. So I'll kind of prompt you before I talk about that at the very end of this. So let's talk about The Communion Girl, or as the title screen translated says, The Little Communion Girl. So kind of both titles. Directed by Victor Garcia, who also did 30 Days of Night, Blood Trails, Frost Giant, which sounds fun, Hellraiser Revelations, heard not good things, The Damned, and An Affair to Die For. Written by Garcia as well as Guillem Clua, who wrote lots and lots and lots of TV episodes of shows, plus God's Crooked Lines, the movie. And Alberto Marini, who wrote Sleep Tight, Extinction, Summer Camp, Don't Get Out, and Hostage Radio, just to name a few. Again, this is a Spanish film. It's a Shudder original. It's coming to Shudder on Friday, August 11th. So, quick synopsis. Basically about people who are out partying. They get kind of lost in the woods. Something goes wrong. They come across something eerie, something odd, and a girl finds a doll. Creepy looking doll, as you would probably assume, because this is a horror movie, and odd things start to happen to these people. That's as much as I want to give you, because I just want to give you a little bit of a taste for what you're in for, but I don't want to give you too much, because I don't want to give anything away if people want to watch this movie. And I feel like synopses, a lot of times, they just give too much away. Anyway, the opening scene for this movie definitely grabs your attention. It really makes you want to know the backstory. It makes you want to know, how did we get to this point? It's one of those ones that really gets its hooks into you because it's something pretty intense, pretty in your face that's going on. And like I said, it makes you want to know what happened here. How did we get here? And obviously the movie then addresses that. I love when movies do that. I think it's a very effective way to get people engaged, to maybe get them to put down their phones and say, oh, I'm going to pay attention to this one because you got me with the intrigue. The acting is quite good in this. Now, I'm watching it as an English speaker, reading the subtitles, so I don't know how the subtitles did as far as translation, but what I was hearing from the tone and the physical acting from the actors, it was quite good, in my opinion. It all lined up. It sold it for me. I thought they did a great job. Cast was very good. The movie looks pretty good. It does have some portions where the cuts get a little bit too aggressive. Primarily in the beginning, there's one scene in particular in the woods. You'll know what I'm talking about if you've seen it, or if you do see it, where there's just some really rapid, aggressive cuts that happen in the movie. And I was just I felt like I was getting visual whiplash. And I'm like, man, my eyes are starting to hurt at this point. It's way too much. So after that, it did seem to calm down a bunch. So maybe just a one-time thing, or I got used to it. I don't know. It's one of those two things. But, not a huge deal breaker or anything like that. But if I see an issue in a movie, I'm going to bring it up. Just like if I see something good, I'm going to do that. There is a scene involving a dog in this, so people be warned. You're not seeing anything happening to the dog. It is the aftermath of what you see of the dog. It is disturbing. So if that's something you're sensitive to, just be warned. You might not want to watch it for that reason, or you might want to, I don't know, I was going to say you might want to close your eyes, but you're not necessarily going to know when that happens. It's relatively earlier in the movie. It's probably within the first 15 minutes, I'd say. Maybe even earlier than that. But yeah, I like to give those warnings because that's a very triggering thing for a lot of people. The characters are pretty well written. They seem to be real people with some actual depth to them. A lot of the times with these horror movies that I'm watching and reviewing, there's not a whole lot going on with the character, and they don't feel realistic. They just feel like this one-dimensional person that you're just like, this is a nondescript human being, basically. But with this one, I felt like there was like literal depth to these characters. Like, you could understand who they were as people. You got a really good sense of personality, different personalities, their relationships with each other, the issues, the good parts of it, all that good stuff. So I really think that writing with this one was a strength, a big strength, along with directing and cinematography, because it looked quite good. I already said it looked good, but it looked really interesting, and I'll kind of comment on, I have another note on something related to how it looks, which really stood out to me, but I'll get to that when I get to it. They do gradually ramp things up, but the pacing of it feels good. It's a very kind of slow, gradual ramping up of kind of tension and the messed up events, the more intense events that are happening in the movie. But even though it is relatively slow, it still feels like it's moving at a good pace. The movie is like an hour and 38 minutes with credits, so it's not super long, but there certainly are movies that aren't super long that feel like they take forever. Like, they're much longer than they are. This is not one of those movies. I think they did a good job of kind of pacing out the little tidbits that you get of the overall what's going on with it, and I think that they do a good job of, when they're not doing those things in the in-between space, filling it in with interesting character interactions. And like I said, the depth of the characters, since that is there, that really helps with keeping people's interest during the more down times as well. The lighting in this is done very well. Really enjoyed the lighting in this. It doesn't just accomplish the job of lighting things properly, it stands out as looking very cool at points. There is a lot of stuff that's done in dark, and not only do they light things effectively, but the lighting in the dark just looks interesting. It looks cool. This is the first time in a long time that I've really taken note of lighting, not just as in, oh man, they did such a good job just lighting this, but making it look interesting with the light. It was really cool. Like, I think that's one of my favorite aspects of the movie. I know that sounds kind of stupid, because usually it's more like the story stuff, but it just really caught my eye as something that was, I don't know, just unique and really standing out. The score does get pretty heavy-handed in this, unfortunately, a few times. It's not 100% heavy-handed throughout the entire movie, but there are definitely those times where it feels like the score is screaming at you, and I personally hate those moments. I'm more the type of viewer who, I want you to kind of give me a little bit of credit. I know how to feel. You don't need to beat people over the head with sounds in order to get them to feel what's going on in the movie. So I would have liked a more restrained score, although that having been said, the composition of the actual score is good. I mean, it definitely does what it needs to. There is something that happens at the end that hits me two ways. I don't know if I actually liked it or not. Part of me was like, this seems kind of cheesy, stupid, but then part of me was like, yeah, but it kind of also hits me halfway in the feels a little bit. It was such a weird thing that, like, I literally don't know how to feel about it. I literally don't know how to feel. And so I think for that reason, you're probably going to have a large portion of people who find it very ineffective and a large portion of people who found it very effective. And I'm that middle person, which I'm sure there will be other people who are kind of in the middle on it. But I literally was sitting there just like trying to process it, and I'm just like, oh yeah, I kind of really like that, but I actually kind of really don't like that. And it kept going back and forth. I couldn't decide. It was weird. There is something they did with the ending that I really enjoyed. I do think maybe they should have delved into that a bit more, maybe even a little bit more than a bit. But the movie starts to feel like you kind of have a really good sense of where it's going, and then they do throw in more interesting stuff, or one thing in particular that's more interesting that I did not see coming, that I was like, oh, that is cool. I love that, and I wish they would have done more with that. Now, that said, maybe that's because, I don't know, they wanted to do more movies, and they just kind of want to, like, wet people's palates. I don't know. But, yeah, just saying. they mix supernatural with real life horrors in this one. You know, there are these themes. There's a trauma aspect to this movie that, you know, a lot of horror films touch on trauma. I think they do it in a pretty effective manner with this. So for that reason, it also might be a little bit tough because it's kind of familial relationship related trauma. So for some people, it's going to be a little bit hard to process, but I think they do a good enough job of not making it too intense or graphic, but addressing it properly at the same time and mixing it into the supernatural elements of the movie itself. So I really like how those things are kind of married. And then the last thing I want to say, this is the warning I have for people. I'm going to make a comparison to a well-established movie. So if you don't want to hear that, go ahead and stop the video now. But for the people who have chosen to stick around, I believe that this movie feels at least partially inspired by The Ring. Not the original Ringu. Well, I mean, to some degree, yes, but more the remake, the American remake with Naomi Watts. And, yeah, the Gore Verbinski, I think, did that one. But for that reason, like, it's kind of cool, but then it also at times feels very derivative of it, and you can't help but make those comparisons in your mind. And that's where I do think the thing that I was saying that I wasn't expecting really does help with it, because without that, I think it would feel way too derivative to the point where I'd just be like, okay, whatever. But yeah. But anyway, those are my thoughts on The Communion Girl, or The Little Communion Girl, however you want to say it. Out of 5 stars with half stars in play, I thought about it for a bit. I was between 3 and 3.5 stars. I'm going to go with the 3.5 because I think, you know, the acting, the writing, the lighting, like those types of things just kind of push it up a little bit more, because it just does not feel right at a 3. I think a 3.5 is kind of where it definitely should go. But I would love to hear other people's opinions on this. If you've seen the movie, or if you go and watch the movie, you can come back here, you can comment and let me know your opinions, especially differing opinions, because I always like to hear what other people got out of it. And typically I don't want to just hear, yeah, I reiterate basically everything you say, because that's not that interesting to read. Although, you know, if that's what you want to say, that's totally fine. But yeah, the more thought-provoking stuff, someone to kind of challenge it and be like, oh, well, I see where you're coming from this, but I thought this, you know. Anyway, thank you very much. Comment. Appreciate you watching this video. Do me a favor, though. Hit subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. That's your best way to repay me for all this free content. I would greatly appreciate that. Hit the notification bell button, because then you'll know when I'm putting up new videos, which I'm doing 3 a week at this point. But regardless, thanks again for watching this, and until next time, keep it brutal.